Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 125 episodes of mead making, education, information, and entertainment. More than 80 guests have stopped by the Mead House. Professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey specialists have all visited to share their knowledge. The Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a key holder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. Hey, you can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. Mead House. Mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 141 episodes, Ryan. Can you believe that?
It only seems like 126.
Doesn't it? Hey, you know where to find us, too, on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. I'm not going to go through that whole rundown. Hey, just take a look at the website, themeadhouse.com. I'm sure you'll be able to find us anywhere you look. Hey, the Mead House, it's produced for home mead makers and brewers just like you. Looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. Hey, talk to us. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and we do see your messages. Thank you so much. There's been a bunch of them here in the last couple of months. Facebook and Twitter, both at The Mead House, or you can just email us at info@themeadhouse.com. We'd love to hear from you. Jeff is out tonight. I guess he got fed up with his phone, Ryan, slammed it on the ground, broke it, drove over it with his car. That wasn't enough, so he went in the garage and got a sledgehammer and beat the crap out of it. So Jeff is looking for a new cell phone tonight, so it's just me and Ryan. Wait till Jeff hears it. Hey, in this episode, our guest this evening is a Scotch and whiskey drinker. Perhaps we can just forego the talk about mead making and move right into a discussion about the hard stuff. But hey, I guess that's another show. Brian Hart is our guest tonight. And what makes him special? A smoked mead at this year's Valkyrie's Horn. That's what. Hey, in segment 2, in the most recent article in I'm always confused how people pronounce it. Zymurgy. An American Home Brewers Association publication. The cover article is about brewing with honey. That seems to be right up our alley. It's also a craze for now, I think, or maybe a fad. I don't know. Either way, I keep seeing more craft brews on the shelf, Ryan, with the word honey somewhere in the label. And, of course, in segment 3, Facebook friends, Reddit friends, and what have you, all of our friends, this is where we try to answer some questions that you might have with no formal expertise other than what we've been able to do in our own brew house. All that and more here at the Mead House. But first, say thank you to all the Mead House key holders who help keep the Mead House podcast free. And believe me, there is a cost to the producing this show, and we greatly appreciate your generosity. If you want to become a Mead House key holder and help support the show, you can do it for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great thank you gifts to send you. So get on over to patreon.com, search for the Mead House, or just click on the link in the show notes. You'll find it. And we do appreciate it. What are we drinking tonight? I know, Ryan, you're not a member of the Sap House Mead Club, right?
I'm not.
Oh my God, dude. I wish I could pour a little 2-ounce pour of this and send it over to you. I'm drinking the Heard It Through the Grapevine. This is a chocolate covered raisins. And let me tell you something. I know Evan Henderson probably had a hand in this thing. Dude, if he's not licking the bottom of the fermenter, this stuff is so good. I have not had something with raisins in it that tasted this good. I mean, you talk about chocolate covered raisins. I've been kind of sipping on it here before the show. I wanted to get a head start, and it's got a very nice aroma. The honey aroma comes right at you. You dig a little bit deeper, you can get into those raisins and cocoa beans, cacao beans. But I tell you, on the first sip, I was blown away. You get this mild chocolatey sweetness on the front of your tongue, and it just keeps rolling back. And then finally, the raisins start falling into place about a little, almost, a little before mid palate, and then the vanilla kicks in behind it. And I tell you, before you know it, by the time you swallow this thing, you're looking for another one. This stuff is really good. I mean, you talk about chocolate covered raisins. Go to the store, go to a candy store, and get a box of chocolate covered raisins and chew on a couple of those, and then get a glass of this. I'm telling you, you won't know the difference. Sap House, you guys nailed it on this. Good stuff. In my other hand, I'm drinking one of my favorites tonight, and since our guest is all about whiskey and scotch, I'm drinking kind of a blend of all, actually rye, scotch, and whiskey. This is an offering by High West Whiskey. It's called Campfire. And I'll tell you, if you like that smoky, peaty type of scotch whiskeys, this stuff is great. It's a blend of rye, like I said, and Kentucky bourbon and single malt scotch whiskey. And they nailed it on this. High West Campfire. That's what's in my other fist tonight. Ryan, you've always got something unusual, usually pretty good, in your cups tonight. What is it?
Well, so a lot of news here happening at the Mead House North. We are in the process of moving, and I I went through the old fermentation room, and I think I found let's just say I've moved out of it about 20 cases. And that didn't even include the rack. That was just what was in boxes.
Oh my God.
And the rack is also full. I think it holds 160 bottles, and let's just say there's probably about 100 bottles on it. And yeah, I don't want to move this stuff. I want to drink it. I want to drink as much of it as possible and not have to move full bottles. And I still got stuff in fermenters and carboys, and that'll be fun to worry about.
Yeah.
So one thing at a time, baby steps. I'm working on the bottles that are on the rack, and I pulled one off. I thought it was carbonated. I thought it was a mixed, fruit melomel that I had carbonated. Opened it up. It's not carbonated at all. So it wasn't conditioned long enough. It's still very good. It's light bodied, which is why I like carbonating them, because these are just super light bodied.
Yeah.
But it's really refreshing, great flavor, and really enjoy it. So, these bottles I might have to put in a box if they're not ready, but I'll have to try to drink everything else I possibly can here. So, with that being said, if you're looking to buy a piece of living history and you want to move into the former Mead House North, contact me and through the website or the Facebook page, and I can get you the information. Or if you're somebody I know in the area and you want to help move and take, say a case of mead for the day's labor, I'd be happy to do that for you too.
Yeah.
Contact me as well. So we've been talking a lot about Valkyrie's Horn, and I said I was going to have some of those medal-winning crafters on the show to talk about their meads. Well, at the after party, one of the more distinctive bottles I remember tasting was made by Brian Hart. It was a smoked mead, and we'll get into that in a minute. And I asked Brian to come on the show and talk to us about it. Brian is from Michigan, and has worked in food service for the past 2.5 decades, and enjoys craft beers and ciders. I don't know how you couldn't, being in Michigan. 3 years ago, ran into a beekeeper at a local cider house and talked about making mead. Ordered Ken Schramm's book, and a couple hours later, a new hobby was born. Joined a brewing group. I think he's found his passion in mead. He likes to be creative and try new things, not a fan of just following the recipe. It'll fit right in here, huh, JD?
You know, what is it about you people in the North and carrots, too?
Didn't even get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
He juiced 10 pounds of carrots and made a ginger carrot mead and used chipotle peppers. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
His wife has encouraged him to try to make a variety of mead, including even some braggots. I think he's going to fit in here even better. Currently, he's got a peach habanero hydromel carbonating right now.
That sounds good.
And has made a strong ginger hydromel in the past. Always looking for ideas to try. And when not making mead, enjoys scotch, whiskey, riding quads, and fast cars. Welcome to the show, Brian. And what's in your cup tonight?
Tonight I poured a glass of my smoked tea mead, since how we're going to be talking about that. And I also have a glass of strawberry rhubarb mead that a friend of mine in the homebrew group made. I enjoyed it last month when we tasted it, so he gave me a bottle. So I figured that'd be a fun one to drink as well.
Very good.
Yeah, I've had a couple of rhubarb meads. You know, the group up here did a year ago now, a rhubarb challenge at Big Beer's Big Beer event, and I got to try a couple of those. It's an interesting vegetable to work with, but it can be done very nicely. Well, Brian, tell us, this is your medal-winning smoked mead. This was in the experimental sweet category. It was definitely one of the more memorable, intriguing meads that I tasted. Why don't you tell us about that mead?
Well, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to make for my next mead. So I drove to the homebrew store, and they have a good variety of stuff there, including a whole bunch of tea making stuff. And when you walk right in the door, they have glass jars of all the different teas. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to make, so I decided I was going to smell teas until I smelled one that sounded interesting. And I found Lapsang Soucha, which is a Chinese black tea. It's the smokiest tea mead that there is on the planet. And it smelled really delicious and smoky. Me and my wife had just came back from Scotch the year before, or from Scotland on a trip. So I like smoky scotches, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to make a smoked tea mead. I like tea and I like smoky scotches. I thought maybe I can get kind of a mead that has some of that type of flavor to it. So wasn't exactly sure how much tea I should put in because I've never made a tea mead. So I bought 6 ounces of tea, brought it home. I wasn't sure if I should just do it like a dry hop and put it in a bag during secondary. I decided that I would make a strong tea. So I got a large pot, put it on the stove, filled it with water, put the tea in a bag, made a strong tea, and let that cool. And added that to my fermenter, and then added the honey and water. And then I used a 71B-1122 yeast, a little bit of Energizer to start, and then put that all in my fermenter, and then added a little bit of ground nutmeg, some zest and juice from one orange, and then I did a staggered nutrition and nutrient for the next 5 days. I'd stir it and add the nutrient, and then during the fermentation, my wife actually came home. This is kind of entertaining. She doesn't like smoky scotches like I do. She walked in the house and says, "It smells like the house is on fire. What's burning?" So
I love
even the smell coming out of the fermenter, she said smelled like a campfire. Something was on fire.
it. Yeah. I do
So-
that when I roast cocoa beans here in the house. I get the neighbors standing at the door. Are you selling Hershey's chocolates? The whole place smells like one big Hershey bar. I get it, man.
I told her I'm trying to make a smoked tea mead. We'll see. So, and then I really enjoyed it. Initially, it was even smokier than what it was when I sent it to the competition. The smoke actually died down quite a bit. The smoke is part of the tea, so I was a little limited on how to control how much smoke is there. Personally, I don't mind smoke. I enjoy that. That was kind of the whole point of making the mead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she came out delicious. It was one of those, I brought it to the homebrew group. It was actually, I joined this local homebrew group. It's a pretty good sized group in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I brought that to my very first meeting, and it was entertaining. I'm one of the few members that actually makes mead. Most of them are all beer guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to start with doing your tastings from light to dark and, weaker to stronger. So obviously the mead went at the end of the group. So a couple people were about ready to leave, and then they heard that there was to be a smoked tea mead, and just the name intrigued people. So I had a couple people turn around to come back and try it. And that was when it was still, probably about 6 months old.
Huh.
And it was either one of those things that people really enjoyed or they really did not. If you like smoky stuff, that's fantastic. If you don't like smoky items, it's something that people are not going to enjoy. But I decided that I had so many people like it that I wanted to enter it.
I think people are that way about Scotch too. I mean,
Absolutely.
I know a few people who drink Scotch, and some of them prefer the more sweeter, more, I don't know, I call it American whiskey type Scotches than the peaty, smoky stuff. I happen to like both, but
Yep.
I think there's that two different kinds of people, and that's okay.
Well, that's what makes making this kind of thing fun, is you make what you like, and hopefully some other people will enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I don't make the stuff for other people to drink. I make it for me to drink.
That's first and foremost.
Yeah.
I'll give some bottles away, but at the end of the day, I want to enjoy it.
Why should I buy my liquor to get drunk off of when I can make it for free at home?
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
So that's kind of how the smoked tea came to be.
I had Ryan. I think I know that there was a bottle of that. I don't remember what night at one of the after parties, or was it at the? I don't even remember now. See what you do to me. At any rate, I believe I had a sample of that smoked tea mead either at an after party or it was at the one either on Saturday or Friday or Saturday. I don't remember which, but. I thought it was very interesting myself. I was a little surprised when somebody said it was smoked tea, and I thought, smoked tea? Where the hell do you get smoked tea from? And I'm thinking, well, how do you smoke tea to begin with? Not realizing that, the tea was, like I said, already smoked ahead of time. So
Yep.
I thought it was very
Apparently
unique.
there is a worldwide shortage of Lapsang Sousa tea.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think there's a shortage in Grand Rapids, because I was at the homebrew store the other day and they still had plenty.
Yeah.
But when you look online, some people talk about that it's in short supply. I can't imagine that's a tea for everybody, but this one got me thinking. I was pleasantly surprised with my first competition to have that one, do well.
Yeah.
So I actually, just this week, I started another tea mead. This one's to be a little different tea. This is going to be a tea called Burroughs Brew. It's got a little bit of toasted coconut in there as well. So we'll see how this one comes out.
I'm a big fan. I'm a teetotaler. Okay, now that that's out in the open, I'll probably get a lot of emails now, a lot of hate mail. What do you mean you're a teetotaler? JD, come on. But I am. I am a teetotaler. I love Earl Grey in the morning. I only drink it in the morning, but I like my Earl Grey on occasion. And I'm also an English black tea, breakfast tea, in the morning with a couple of tablespoons of honey, and sometimes I'll put a little orange zest in it in my little I don't know what called, little tea fob or whatever the hell you call it, and I always thought it would be interesting to make a tea out of an Earl Grey, a mead out of an Earl Grey tea. I've heard a lot of people use tea to build tannins. I don't know, Ryan. Is that kind of an old school thing? Using tea to kind of build a tannin level in meads. I've read that time or two. I know, but I always go ahead.
Yeah, it's maybe it's old school. I guess I don't mean that in any negative sense of the word.
No.
I've made strong black teas before, and used that for to build some tannin, some body, and in some of the different meads I've made. I think I've even used it in different beers. I've used tea, so wine. I mean, you could really use it in anything, and tea is great. What I really was interested or found interesting was we've talked a lot about smoke in meads in the last handful of months, occasionally, and they're talking about how to get that smoke, and everything from some people, find ways to, bong, sort of, kind of like create a bong and put smoke into the must. Or people have tried, cold smoking honey or smoking fruit or adding really charred wood to their batches. But this is just another tool in that toolbox of using this smoky tea, which I think is a great way to do it. A less messy, less risky, and I remember this mead. It had a lot of smoke in it, so definitely good there. You said, Brian, you used 6 ounces for how big was the batch you made?
I made a 5-gallon batch, so it's actually quite a bit of tea for 5 gallons.
Yeah, a little over an ounce, an ounce and a plus per gallon there.
But I figured I wanted smoky, so I went a little strong, and I'm glad because it did die down a little bit.
Yeah, we've talked about some of the additives that we, vanilla bean and so on and so forth, things that we put in our meads that have a tendency. Coconut is another one that comes to mind, that tend to kind of slide off the scale with age.
Yeah, I made a coconut braggot and lost all my coconut.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. Within 3-4 months, it's like gone. Not necessarily. I didn't make a braggot. I made a porter, but trying to keep that smoke. I don't know how long smoke would last. I guess if you set a couple of bottles aside, Brian, and keep tabs on it and find out how long does that flavor last in the bottle.
Right now we're over a year, so.
Well, smoke is smoke, whether you're smoking tea or smoking honey or smoking whatever. Smoke is smoke, right? I can't imagine it would have any different effect, just, being dependent on whatever it was you were smoking. So,
there's a few different smoked beers, and I'm going to forget the name of one of the styles, and it was a German style of smoky lager, and I had one of those that had been cold cellared for probably 8 or 10 years.
Oh wow!
And it was brought out at a big tasting party. And it's still, there was smoke there, but it was really
kind of faint.
Subdued. You knew it was smoky. I 100% knew that it was smoky, but it was also subdued. I think the smoke fades, but unlike coconut, sometimes I've had coconut fade to the point where, you wouldn't even have known there was coconut in it. at any point. So.
Well, and I've got that smoked. I use that smoked malt in a braggot that I made, and of course, I mean this is a shot in the dark because it doesn't take. We're talking 4 to 5 ounces period, and of the smoked malt steeped in the grains for my braggot. I did get a little bit of smoke out of it, but not quite to my liking. I'm looking for something more. I'm looking not as strong as a nice peated Scotch, but something to let you know that hey, I'm here. I'm really here, and I want you to think about me when you're done. When you're finished with this. But I didn't get that, and so my next try, I'm going to add a little bit more of that peated malt. Brian, I want to hear more about the carrot thing because Ryan also did a carrot project. How did you approach yours, and what was your prep work for it?
So, washed and just got regular fresh carrots from the grocery store. Had my wife pick up 10 pounds, and I had kind of went to a local meadery. We have one around just a little bit to the west of us called Bardic Wells, and they had one that they called Root Fruit, and kind of intrigued me. So I thought, well, I want to make a carrot ginger. So I had her pick up 10 pounds of carrots, and if I remember right, I think we peeled them and juiced them.
Juiced them. Okay.
We had a juicer that we got when we got married, probably 16, 17 years prior to that sat in a box in the basement. So it was a good time to take that new juicer out and try it out and see if we could turn that white plastic orange.
I think every married family has one of those in the basement.
Well, mead makings gave me an excuse to try it. I can tell you, and if you never run blueberries in a juicer, they don't work so well.
No, yeah.
So we juiced out 10 pounds of carrots. I actually then took the pulp out of the juicer because I wanted to extract as much carrot as I could out of it.
I was just going to ask you that, yeah.
I put the pulp in a pot, put a little bit of water in there, and just kind of simmered it, and then drained off that pulp and added that water to my must as well. And then on that one, we actually used just a jar of ground ginger that we got. Mm-hmm. Since then, I've started using regular ginger root. I think I get a little bit more flavor out of it. But initially, it was funny. The leaves in the bottom of the fermenter, when I cleaned it out, were almost neon orange. And the meat ended up with just a nice light, almost a brownish color. It didn't end up with any orange color to it, really. All that just dropped out with the yeast. And I can't say that I taste carrot in it. I can say I get a little bit of the ginger. But it has a very unique taste. I really enjoy it. As it aged, it gets better every bottle I open.
One of the early episodes, I mean, we're going way back, probably somewhere in the first 20 episodes. I think Mississippi was talking about we're talking about melons, I think, and the amount of fruit or product per gallon. And he came up with the idea that, if you're not using anywhere between 4 and 5 pounds a gallon of fruit or whatever it is you're doing, it's not enough in a 5-gallon batch. If you had to do again, would you think increasing the amount of carrots is going to be the answer there, or how would you approach it again?
I might, but I really enjoyed it the way it was. I think that the traditional carrot flavor, at least if you do it in primary, is not going to be there. But I think if you were to add the carrot juice in secondary, I don't know if you'd ever get it to clarify.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think in the future, maybe I'd do it the same way. In primary, I'd still do the 10 pounds, but maybe I'd try, as it slowed down towards secondary, I'd try adding another 10 pounds of carrot juice to it and see maybe, an addition front and back instead of just up front. Now,
you also used chipotle peppers in it as well, right?
No, that was a separate one. I made I made a raspberry chipotle mead. That was,
Oh,
I didn't actually have chipotle peppers in the carrot mead.
I see.
No, I made a raspberry chipotle that I
Wow.
really enjoyed. It.
I was
That
going
one
to
has a
say,
little smoke to it as well.
oh yeah, Chipotle. Yeah, how did that one turn out? Good.
That one, my wife just sitting there. She just said, "That's fantastic." So
Outstanding.
yeah, that one did. I actually entered that one in the Valkyries Cup as well. I didn't win with that one, but I was still pretty happy. It looks like that one. I got my score showed. I got 36 on both my judging sheets.
Not bad. Not bad. Was this your first competition?
This was
Wow.
the biggest competition issue I had was I had never shipped anything to a competition, and I went to my local shipping place and told them what I wanted to ship, and from then on it was a pain in the butt.
Yeah, no. There's a knack to that. You tell them it's what do we tell them, Ryan? It's barbecue sauce.
Yeah, I learned that.
Yeah.
I was so frustrated. I live just north of Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is a big city. I actually live just north in a little small town. So I drove to just a little bit south of me to another town store, and I knew the people. I thought it wouldn't be a problem. And then I ended up driving to Grand Rapids, and then they told me that they couldn't ship it.
Yeah.
So I actually stopped by a local brewery, and I went to the brewery office, and I said, "Hey, here's the issue. I kind of didn't know it was illegal to ship this like this, so could you help me out?" So the local brewery actually put it on their account and tagged it as alcohol and has to be signed for. And so I actually got the brewery to do me a favor and ship it for me.
Outstanding. What's the name of the brewery? Do you know?
Perrin Brewing.
Perrin Brewing. Outstanding. Not that
I actually, she told me she didn't want to make a habit out of it, but she'd help me out. So
yeah. Well, yeah. Wait till this gets out on the meat house. Maybe we should.
As a thank you, I dropped her off a bottle of strawberry mead.
There you go. Thank you. That's good enough. Quick story here. My wife and I went to North Carolina, and good friends, very good friends. I mean, as much as family as anybody. And when we were leaving, one of my good friends out there, whose wife has a cousin who has a still. Now, it's not one of these legal ones. It's one of these illegal ones. So,
one of those ones that they're making for fragrances, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, we were talking about moonshine and whatnot. Well, when we were ready to leave, she came to the house of my other friends to say goodbye and presented me with this cardboard box with some twine wrapped around it. And I thought, what's this? And she says, "Oh, it's moonshine." I opened it up, and here's this quart jar nestled in this bunch of newspaper full of moonshine. I told her, "Sweetheart, I can't take this on the airplane." This is like taking a 5-gallon gas can they're just not going to allow this. So I had to leave it there. But anyway, just a real quick story. I thought it was kind of funny. Ryan, jump in here, dude. I'm pretty enthused with this guy. I like the direction he's going, the experimentation and everything. I dig this.
Brian, you said you've also played around with a couple of braggots. Those are pretty popular style on this show. What have you done in that style?
So my first braggot, I had never brewed a beer before. I mean, I had never made any alcohol prior to my mead experience. So I went on Craigslist and I found a turkey fryer burner, a propane one, and a big aluminum pot. So I decided, well, now I can try to make a beer. So I didn't know how to do all grain. So I actually just picked up extract, and I decided that I like dark beers. So I thought I'll pick up the dark malt extract. So I don't have my recipe in front of me for that one. But I want to say I used like 6 pounds of dark malt extract, and I think I used 9 pounds of honey.
Oh, wow.
I tried to do about a 50-50 on the fermentables. Mm-hmm. I wanted to keep it real close to the 50-50 mark versus what came from grain and what came from honey. I don't remember the exact numbers on it. Yeah. So I just did where you boil the dark malt extract. I did do some steeping grains in there. I few ounces of this, a few ounces of that. I steeped in a pot on the stove, and then added them to the liquid.
Yeah.
Did that one. Everyone really enjoyed it. The guys in the homebrew group that I had joined kind of picked on me because I used extract. They're all about all grain, which makes sense. They have a little bit more experience than I do.
Sure.
So my next one I made, I decided that I'm going to do this all. So I don't have that recipe in front of me either. I pulled up my recipes for my peach habanero and my smoky and a couple other ones, but didn't have that one in front of me. The next time I did it with all grain. I actually did a Bruin bag style for the grains.
Yeah.
And then put up a big ladder so I could drain my grain bag.
Yeah, right.
Get the most out of it. The old ratchet strap around the bag, holding it up and above your pot. Did that method. That one I actually added a bunch of toasted coconut. I think I want to say it was like 3 or 4 pounds of coconut. Might have even been a little bit more than that. Just toasted it in frying pans on the stove.
Yep.
Got those toasted so they were just a nice light brown. Added those in a bag. I actually added them in a bag in the boil when I was boiling my grains, or my wort. So I added that in there, and then I also took that same bag out of my boil and put it right in the fermenter. That one came out fantastic. I actually have a couple of friends that told me, when are you going to have a braggot? I was hoping to have one for this winter, but I didn't make it yet, so that's probably going to be a spring beer or a spring drink.
There you go.
Because I will make another one. But that was one of the ones that I really enjoyed. The coconut was almost perfect initially, but where we talked earlier and said the coconut kind of drops out.
Yeah.
But by the time we finished the 5 gallons of the braggot, there wasn't much coconut flavor left in it.
You know,
unless it was still fantastic.
Unless it's something you're going to keep around and age. You know, I mean, that's one thing, but I think that if you're, you know, some of these things with, like we mentioned, vanillas, coconut, what have you, I think if you're working with those are meant to drink rather quickly. I mean, you know, as soon as you think they're ready. And then when they're ready.
That's why I would do in the past, in the future.
Yeah, and that's how I'm going to treat my next coconut project or anything that I do with coconut. You know, rather than plan on trying to hang on to it for a while, just, you know, make it available and just put it in a keg and stick it in my kegerator and put it on tap. Finish it, you know, drink it.
I've been told, I don't know, I haven't tried it ever, but I've been told if you actually use the coconut extract that it doesn't dissipate out like that.
Well, you know, and I have yet to try, you know, one of our sponsors for the Iron Bee was Amaretti. We've talked about it lots of times on the show. You can go to virtually, even the last episode. And of course I mentioned it tonight, so it'll be in the product list tonight. So there will be a link on this episode. I mean, you go to Amaretti.com, and they've got tons and tons of flavors, and they've broken into the brewing. They're really concentrating hard on the brewing side of things for flavorings and that kind of thing. So I have yet to try the coconut. Ryan, have you played around with anything coconut from Amaretti at all?
I have not tried an Amaretti coconut product, but I do have a braggot going right now with the Cascade Beer Candy Syrup coconut. So I'll see how that one. I'll see how that one goes. It, you know, again, same thing. It's supposed to stick around longer and let the coconut flavor hang around longer. The thing with the extract, so you kind of look at it in the jar of Cascade, is it looks like there is some little coconut, you know, shreds in there. So, you know, I was originally thinking of using it as like a priming sugar, but I don't know if I don't know if I'm going to do that here because I don't want to introduce that into the bottle, you know, that coconut shred
might be overpowering at that point.
Well, you might wind up with little bits and pieces in the bottle itself if you.
Yeah, I'm more worried about putting that vegetable or that what am I trying to say? Vegetation in there, or any of that vegetative matter, and so not only are you kind of a chunky consistency, but potentially pull some off flavors depending on what that exactly is.
Yeah, and you don't want to serve your beer with a knife and fork either. So.
Right,
I mean,
right. That's,
some of the
best.
Some of the best beers require a knife and fork to drink them.
Before we let you go, Brian, a couple other things here. You've got this peach habanero thing carbonating right now. How are you? You carbing in the bottle? You kegging? What's your process there?
I put that in a corny keg and I'm going to force carb it.
Okay.
I actually, that one I back sweetened a little bit.
Okay.
So I actually ended up adding about 3/8 of a cup of honey back to the 5-gallon batch.
Peaches or peach juice?
So I racked it on 5 pounds of peaches in the secondary, and it really didn't give me a whole lot of peach. It gave me a nice peach aroma, but very little flavor.
Yeah.
And talking to a few people, apparently peaches are one of those things that takes a lot of fruit. It's kind of like a strawberry. It takes a ton of fruit to get much flavor.
Yep. Very
so
difficult.
I actually used, I'm pretty sure it was the Amaretti brand peach flavoring.
Yeah.
To add to it. So I did the sliced, peaches that I froze, and then once I froze them, I thawed them, and then stuck those right in the fermenter.
Yeah.
But I just wasn't getting where I wanted it with the peaches. So that's a really interesting thing I did is I actually made my wife, she likes Belgian beers. Okay. So I made her a Belgian beer for her birthday.
Very good.
And I used a Y yeast 3522. Is that what that is, Sarah? Yeah, 3522 Y yeast, which is a Belgian yeast. So after I racked her beer off, I've never made a mead using beer yeast. I thought, I'm going to see if that yeast in the bottom, that yeast cake is still viable. So I just mixed up a little bit of honey and some water.
Okay,
put it in there.
Wait. Stop right here. Okay. This is this is your totally first experience in mead making. You've never made anything before, any of these, right?
No, I started making mead about 2.5, 3 years ago.
Okay, so how would you have known to just mix up a batch and throw it in your dregs from a beer that you just made? Where did you hear about that or learn about that? Or is that something
So I've been in food processing. I've worked in mostly machine maintenance and food processing for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
So I know about bacteria and I know about bugs and microorganisms.
Mm-hmm.
So microorganisms go dormant when there's no food, but oftentimes they're still viable if you put a little bit of food in there.
Yeah.
So I figured that there's a pretty strong chance. I know some of the breweries will actually sample, some of the breweries, for example, won't drain their brew all the way down. They'll leave the last little bit and use that to prime their next batch.
Right, yep.
So I know that the commercial breweries do it, so I figured I would kind of play with it and see what happens. So I put my airlock back on there. I saw bubbles within a couple hours. So I said, well, it's obviously still viable yeast. So I put 9 pounds of honey in that one. A 5-gallon batch, 9 pounds of honey. And then I just kind of let it go. I didn't add any flavoring initially. And then I did find that the Belgian yeast and honey really like each other. So I put a blow-off on it because my airlock wasn't doing the job. So I put a blow-off tube into a pitcher and then found out that pitcher wasn't big enough as a blow-off. So I had to switch to a bucket in a blow-off tube. So outside of the initial first few days of crazy, crazy activity, that yeast was definitely healthy.
Yeah.
Once she went and got past the primary and was in secondary, that's when I started adding the peaches to it.
Yeah.
And then once I got the peach flavor where I wanted it, had my wife pick me up a package of habaneros. I've never added habaneros. I've never really worked with habaneros at all.
Yeah.
So I sliced off the stems, chopped them up, put the seeds and the pieces of habanero both in there. I know if you take the seeds out, you get a little less capsaicin, but I wanted capsaicin, so
Yeah.
put it all in the fermenter and kind of started after I did it, realizing that maybe a whole package, which was, I don't know, probably, what do you think?
It might be too much.
My wife thinks it was 5 ounces. It might be a little much. So I got my wine thief out a couple hours later and got a little sample out of there and went, wow, she's starting to get some flavor to her.
Yeah.
So I waited a couple more hours and I racked it off of it. And
Yeah.
I cheated. It's been in the kegerator now for 2 or 3 days. So it's not all the way carbonated yet. I've had it on the kegerator. I've got, I think, about 10 psi on it. But I was cleaning my keg line out from the other tap that I just blew on there. So while I was running cleaner through one, I kind of hooked my picnic tap up to that keg. And I actually poured a glass and it's not all the way carbonated yet, but it's got enough. It's going to be delicious. It gives you just up front, you get a little bit of burn in the peach.
Yeah.
But the burn doesn't stay really short-lived, which is nice because if you get something too hot and your mouth just gets nothing but heat, you don't get the flavor.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's going to end up with a really nice, drinkable heat. There's a commercial meadery, probably an hour and a half north of me that I really enjoy. It's called. He made a hard cider, not even a mead. It's a passion fruit ghost pepper cider.
Ooh.
And I picked up a 4-pack of cans when we were up there in September. And they're delicious. It gives you it's that perfect blend of you got flavor and sweet and then the heat as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was shooting for. My peach habanero initially was supposed to be a pink peppercorn mead hydromel. Mm-hmm. But I bought the pink peppercorns and I really don't care for the taste of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I scratched that and changed it to the peach habanero. And I think it's going to be a really fun drink.
Wow. It sounds good. A lot of people we've talked to, who have added chilies and peppers and whatnot to their meads, they talk days, hours and days, not weeks and months.
So mine, ultimately, the habaneros were in there for about probably 4 hours.
Yeah. Well, yeah. How many ounces did you say it was?
My wife thinks it was 5 or 6 ounces.
That's a lot of habaneros. I know how big a habanero. Yeah. That's a lot of habanero.
But it looked really nice floating in there.
Oh my God.
Sometimes you got to learn. I just figured they're small. I realized that when I rubbed my eye 2 hours later after washing my hands a couple times and my eye burned, that, wow, those got a lot of heat.
Yeah. My last question here, I'll throw it over to Ryan before we wrap here. You're a Scotch drinker, a whiskey drinker. You heard the opening of the show. Have you ever had this High West whiskey campfire?
I have not. I was kind of intrigued when you said that.
You got to try this. You have got to try this. If you like that smoky, peaty Scotch, you're gonna love this. This is a very nice blend. You get the you get that it's like chewing on a piece of rye bread. You get that spicy flavor from the rye.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah, and then there's a little bit of sweetness that comes from the bourbon side of the house, I think, and then the smoke is almost instant, but it lasts a long time. It's not an in-your-face smoke, but this is really, really nice. So try this High West whiskey. It's called Campfire. Ryan,
do you think that's as smoky as like a Lafroig or not?
Is it what?
Is it as smoky as like a Lafroig would be?
Yeah, maybe along that lines. It's pretty smoky.
I will have to try that. It sounds delicious.
This is out of the smoky scotches that I have. This actually is probably the smokiest that I've had. Now, I dig smoke. I don't care what you put it in, meat, fruit. I don't care what you put it in. I dig smoke. The more the better, as far as I'm concerned. But this is, this is not something that I drink all the time. people ask me all the time what of my favorites are. I don't have any favorites. I've got a lot that I really like. This is one that I really like.
No, I agree with you. That's kind of how I do it. I have a whole bunch of bottles, and I'm in the mood for this tonight. Now, just pour a small glass.
Exactly. Yep. And sometimes I use that to inspire me for my meads too, because I soak wood in various liquors that I have. I've got a pretty sizable bourbon collection. Each one of them give you different nuances and complexities when you're looking to soak some wood in it and drop it in a batch of mead or whatever. And that's kind of how my collection started out. I wanted to taste a whole bunch of bourbons. At the time, I was looking for a particular flavor. I don't remember what I wound up with, but that's how I wound up with like almost 35 or 40 bottles of bourbon, different labels. But anyway, Ryan, throw the mic over to you as we wrap up here, my friend.
Yeah. Brian, thanks for joining us tonight. Really enjoyed your mead. Hope that you were inspired to enter some more competitions. Hope see you next year back at Valkyrie's Horn and the Iron Bee. We'd love to have you participate in that as well. And we had some folks from Michigan come out to those events, so hopefully we can get you to come out and try some mead with some of the great mead makers and some of the great mead drinkers from across the land as well. So again, thanks a lot for coming on, Brian, and hope to see great things from you again soon.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I already have one I plan on for the competition next year.
Very good. So looking forward to it. All right, Brian, thank you, man.
All right, thank you both.
All right, Brian Hart from Grand Rapids, Michigan. This guy's like on the money. I mean, he finds a hobby, gets neck deep in it, and it sounds like he's putting out some really good stuff, Brian.
Yeah, definitely. Great stuff.
In if you're I don't know, what would you call it? Zymergy?
Zymergy.
I call it Zymergy. It's in if you don't belong to the American Home Brewers Association, you really need to join. I mean, come on. It's like, what is it, like $20-$30 something? I don't even know what it is. But I tell you, it's a wealth of information, not just on brewing beer. They got a ton of stuff in their publications on mead making as well. And you'll find some of the top names, Ken Schramm, Kurt Stock, you name it, have all been heavily involved in the American Home Brewers Association. In the most recent article, Ryan, every time the wife and I go to Total Wine or Bevmo, we're cruising down the beer aisles, and I swear I'm seeing more cans and more bottles with the word honey somewhere on the label. Now, I don't know if this is just a fad or it's just a craze. I mean, like the big IPA thing was kind of a fad for a while. That's kind of dying out a little bit. I think they're getting a little more sensible with these IPAs now. Some of them were just a mouthful of hops. But honey in beer, big article, the cover article in the Zymergy magazine. So start us off. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so the article talked about a lot of different ways that brewers have incorporated honey into their brewers. So they're talking about beer, and they're talking about professional brewers, but then they talk about how home brewers can also utilize that. And some of the things are probably a little more geared toward beer. And some of the things we've talked about on the show, but that they talk, so some adding honey on the hot side. So, some people want to pasteurize their honey, or they're worried about organisms or things
Yeah.
that might be in there to sour. So adding like at the end of the boil, so to speak. And then they talked also about adding honey at the high kreuzen, or right after the most vigorous fermentation to happen.
Right. That's what I do.
And we've talked a lot about that as well. And then they also talked about using honey to bottle condition.
Yep.
Which we've talked about. And they also talked about barrel projects. And I've seen local breweries here do some of this, where they've got a beer that they're going to put in a barrel, and then they introduce honey to the barrel to spark that secondary fermentation, that true secondary fermentation.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. So they talked a lot about the different ways there. I'll tell you, JD, I know you said you got some notes, but before I forget, I'm going to jump in with one of the first things that came to mind for me. And that was, so I do, as you guys know, and I've talked about a lot, so I'm not going to rehash it too much here, is I like to bottle condition.
Yeah.
And I think it protects the beer better. It makes it more transportable, and it's not in a keg, and you can put a 6-pack together to give away, or bring a 6-pack to a party or something like that. So I like bottle conditioning. But anyway, I've always really paired the honey with what I use in fermentation. So if I use orange blossom honey in a braggot, I'd bottle condition, I'd use orange blossom as the priming sugar. Or if I used mesquite honey in say a sizer, then I'd bottle condition that, using mesquite as the priming sugar. Well, I started thinking about creating different flavor layers and just subtlety. You got to do it with the right kind of beverage, right kind of mead, but of mixing a little bit here. So you get an example. Let's just say I made a Saison braggot. So a Saison braggot with orange blossom honey, but then I bottle conditioned with, say, a really funky buckwheat. And you're using just so little of it, when it comes down to per bottle, that it's not like you're going to, in this example, create these overwhelming funky flavors, but you still might get just enough to add that little something extra of complexity into it. So I started thinking, and I'm going to do that the next time here. I've got 2 of them in the tank, in the fermenters here, and I'm going to try that. I'm going to try kind of layering some completely different honeys as the priming sugar to try to create little subtle bits of complexity on top of that.
Yeah.
So JD, what stuck out to you as you were reading that article?
Well, actually, a couple of things. They were talking about the amount of honey used during the fermentation period. And talking about the less than 12% of the original extract isn't going to really give you much. I mean, it's going to ferment out almost completely. There's not going to give any sweetness at all. I've been through this part. I know that for a fact. What it does is it kind of dries out your beer. Now, here's the thing. That could be a good thing. Okay, if you're making a summertime, like I envision. I want to do one for the summer because I've got a whole bunch of citrusy hops here that I want to use for a summertime brew. And I've got some dry malt extract, my Pilsen light dry malt extract. I want to put together a brew. I don't know whether I want to split it half and half, but I want the honey to be at least, say, 30%, because I want a little bit of that aroma to come out in it. And I'll put it into fermentation right after high krausen. It's still going to dry the beer out a little bit, but it's going to give it a really crisp finish. And if you don't if you don't get carried away with a whole bunch of grains and really put a complicated thing together, complicated recipe together, I think you can come up with something really nice, a summertime drink. I want something, you pop the top on a bottle, you chug it down, and you're looking for the second bottle in the cooler. Something you want to sit out on the edge of the pool or take to the beach with. That's what I'm looking for. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that, that the proportion they were, talking about, again, this is mainly pro brewers who are making beers. So they're not making braggots, and they're not on the home side where a lot of the times we can make things that are just unsustainable or too expensive on that. I mean, you talk about 10 pounds of carrots, for example. Now, make that into a full batch, and you got 1,000 pounds of carrots.
Yeah.
So I mean, not the carrots are that expensive, but I mean, other ingredients that we talk about. I mean, honey is not cheap, or you use vanilla is not cheap right now, and all these things. So I think some of that might be just a product of again, being on the pro brew side.
Yeah.
And trying to make beers.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
I did think that something else was really interesting in that article about using honey, simply swapping honey out for candy syrups or your sugars, or your candy sugars.
Yeah.
So a lot of brewers, and maybe not even candy sugars, just sugars in general. So a lot of Belgian, make a lot of Belgian beers. They call for different candy syrups or candy sugars or things like that. Could get the syrup, could get the heart, whatever it might be, just sugar, call it that. And so, simply replacing that out with honey could give you some really interesting flavors. And they say it gives them more, even than especially the lighter sugars. I think too that if some of let's talk about a Michigan brew, Bell's Hop Slam. Bell's Hop Slam is a big IPA that brewed with honey.
Yeah.
There's no honey flavor in that at all. It's just meant to up the gravity without making the body heavy.
Yeah.
So you can, on the beer side, I think they're also using honey to do that, and they think it might give them something extra. Now, frankly, I don't know what the difference would be if you're going to use the 100, the 18 pounds of hops per gallon, or whatever ridiculous proportion they use on a hop slam that makes it so delicious. I don't know if there's any difference in using honey or just frankly white table sugar, because all you're trying to do is up the gravity and keep the body thin, or keep the body from again just getting too out of hand. So there's that. But I've made Belgian beers. I mean, just you find a Belgian recipe you like, for maybe a single or a double or even a triple, and just swap out the candy sugar for honey, and do it at add that honey, after the most vigorous fermentation, and see how it goes. And I've had some good success just doing some very simple swap outs like that.
The one thing that I found, now unless I skipped over it and didn't see it, but something that we've talked about in the past is actually caramelizing honey, because you can actually change the complexity of the honey, greatly, by simply caramelizing it at different heat levels. You don't have to take it all the way to the burnt stage, like if you're doing a boucher, but take it to 270 degrees for say a half hour, an hour, and then let it cool off. I mean, that'll certainly give you a whole different complexity for sure. I didn't see where they mentioned you know, going that route in this article. I wish they would have. Um, those of us that make braggots, I mean, I think we've pretty much run the gamut. I mean, we've burnt the honey, we've caramelized the honey, we've done all kinds of different things to it. And of course, I know this article isn't about braggots, it's about beers. But by the same token, I think, if you're making a beer, let's take your Belgian, for example. Boil the honey for a little bit. Not to the dark, burnt, bitter stage, but take it up a couple of notches. And because these candy syrups also come in different. What do they call it? Oh crap! Went right out of my mind. They've got the light, the dark, the medium.
Yeah, they come in different.
Yeah,
SRM.
Yeah, and that adds a different complexity to the quote unquote beer that you're brewing, or braggot even. Because I've used Cascade stuff in the past as well. So I wish they were talking about that a little bit. The other thing about using honey, they talk about two distinct different processes here too. They talk about using it in fermentation, which is what I like to do because I feel, this is my own personal opinion, I feel that you capture more of the characteristics of the honey, not necessarily the flavors. Remember, the sweetness is pretty much going to drop out unless you add the honey late. I mean, we're talking real late in fermentation, where the yeast is just done and full. I don't want any more. Or you add it pre-fermentation, in the boil. I've done both. I've done the boil and then have cooled my wort down to right around 120 degrees or so, and then mixed in my honey. But I found at that point what I'm getting is a more dry, less honey characteristic beer or braggot than I would if I'm looking for more of that honey character, putting it in during fermentation at high Krausen or just after high Krausen, actually. So that was kind of my take on this thing too.
Yeah, looking at this article, I mean, I'm not trying to critique the article. I'm trying to use it as a thought starter here, conversation starter. So that what I think also is that it's an interesting way. JD, we talked about how they're seeing more and more beers with honey, on the bottle or the can, talking about that. And it's one more way. It's making that step a little bit easier, a little closer when you introduce those people to your friends who are beer drinkers to mead. It's kind of getting that step is getting a little bit shorter. Like, oh, you like all these beers that are made with honey, all these honey beers. Now let's talk about braggots, or let's try a mead. So I see this trend also in helping the mead community by getting that jump over to trying mead as just now one step closer. To one step closer for us.
I have to go back to the Iron Bee and the Valkyrie's Horn. The experience that I had at both. Okay, here's the deal. When you go to a liquor store, your selection of meads are very small. There's not a lot of meaderies out there who have the ability to distribute on a grand scale. And so you're left with a very small selection. Usually they're going to be on the sweeter side, the fruity side. And I hate for people to go away thinking, gee, Is that all mead is? Well, no, it's not. Now, going back to the Iron B and the Valkyries, dude, I tasted more different kinds of meads of all different varieties, carbonated, uncarbonated. And I'll tell you, if you want a really good mead doesn't have to be this sweet thing in a bottle with whatever fruit. Okay, mead, you make some of the best braggots that I've ever had, Brian. You're carbonated, but here's the thing: they're light, they're refreshing, they've got that honey character built into them. It's a mead. I mean, it's a style of mead, and when you come away from, you put the bottle down after taking the last swallow, and you think, damn, that was good. Pour me another. This is a point where I don't think a lot of people have been. Being able to experience the different styles of mead that don't have to be these sweet, almost Kool-Aid like flavors. Sweet. I get the fact that sweet sells. I understand that. That's a given. But man, you take somebody like Brian Hart, who we talked to tonight. I mean, he's experimenting with carrots, chipotle pepper, peaches, and habaneros. Mead doesn't have to be this sweet thing with a bunch of honey and a bunch of fruit in it. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think that what we're doing here at the Mead House, and of course the Iron Bee and the Valkyrie's Horn, if we could expose more people to those kinds of meads and show them that, geez, there is something beyond the blackberry, the black currant. You know what I'm getting at, right?
Absolutely. I think that's the question, right? I make mead. Oh, what does mead taste like?
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of getting away from this article in Zymergy, or whatever you want to call it, a little bit. But there's some great recipes in this article. And like I said, if you haven't signed up yet, all of our listeners out there, if you're not a member, shame on you. Sign up. It doesn't cost that much. A lot of good, a lot of resources there. A lot of people sharing recipes up there, a lot of medal winning recipes that you can find throughout the publications on the on their website. And this article, I mean, granted, they're all beers now, but they do have some recipes up here for you to try. And they've got it broken down to both, the all grain and then the extract, if you can't do the all grain.
Yeah, and the thing I would do now is take those recipes and probably double or triple the honey.
Yeah.
And do that. So again, it's meant to be a thought starter, a conversation starter, an idea starter. It's a good article to do that. So and those recipes in there, some great recipes, and then I would just amp them up, and I would make them, little little more, yeah.
If I was sitting around the table with a bunch of mead makers and said, guys, let's talk about mead, and just threw copies of this article out, you're absolutely right. This is a great conversation starter. Okay, I mean, this is what they're doing in beer. I mean, the sky's the limit. We keep talking about all the different things people are doing, and I mean, my God, all the meads that I tasted at Valkyrie's Horn and Iron Bee. I mean, what people are doing in their garages and their basements is unbelievable. Now, I get the fact that a lot of meaderies can't possibly make some of these meads because it's just cost preventative. I mean, just there's no way. They have to make meads that sell. Um, unlike wine that you can leave on the shelf for 8 months to a year at a time. These meaderies can't leave their product sit that long. They've got to turn it over. So I get all that. I get the expense of it too. I mean, honey's not cheap, and neither are a lot of the other ingredients that go into making mead. I've gone to the store and priced out 30, 40 pounds of blackberries. I mean, it can get pretty expensive after a while, depending on how many batches a week you like to make. Like Carvin Wilson. You've seen the inside of it. You've seen his place, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just gallons and gallons and gallons, just making all kinds of meads. But at any rate, I don't want to talk this thing to death, but check it out. American Home Brewers Association publication, Zymurgy, great magazine. Sign up. It comes with your subscription, and you get access to a lot of good resources there.
Yeah, and let us know if you read the article and it sparks some kind of thought or idea with you. Let us know. We'd like to hear what that is.
Yeah. Too bad Jeff isn't here. Jeff has usually got a pretty good rundown of his Reddit friends over there. I don't follow the Reddit deal. I wish I did. I just don't have time to get into it. But Ryan, I know you're on the Facebook quite often, and you get around the horn a little bit. Have you got anybody out there that's got a question or two?
Yeah, I've got one for us, kind of a long one, so stay with me here.
Maybe that'll take us up. Maybe that'll take us up to the wrap up.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think we might have time for just this one here right now. This is from Cody, and Cody says, "Hi, gang. So I've been making cider for a number of years now, but not with too much luck of it coming out as a good product. We have our own small grinder and press on the farm. Many years, though, all of the batches come out with metallic taste. My cousin tends to not do too much of the work, unracking them often and such." I think you mean the racking. "So I plan on taking some of the cider home with me to keep a better eye on it. So a number of questions. I like my ciders dry and not super sweet, but I do like the apple flavor there. What are some of the best yeasts that you've had luck with to achieve this? Besides adding sugar, do you add any other sorts of enzymes or acids or anything? And how do you differentiate making a cider from an apple wine? Currently, I have 28 gallons of fresh pressed cider in the back of my truck, and I'm going to start today. I will probably do it in 3 or 4 different fermentations to try different yeasts and different ABV potentials. I'd also like to try to make one of them into a wine. Anybody ever done an apple mead with fresh pressed cider? Thank you for any and all help." So a lot of questions here, and let's just kind of break these down, one at a time. He said he likes his cider dry, not super sweet.
Yep.
But he does like the apple flavor.
Yep.
What are some of the best yeasts that you've had luck with in helping achieve this?
I can help him with that.
Yeah. Why don't you start off with that one, JD?
One of my favorite ciders is Magners. I've tasted virtually every frickin' British cider made out there. Other than going to Great Britain and buying, getting some stuff out there, Magners is the one that I have grown to love and like. So what does that mean to me? Okay, I want to try to mimic that flavor and that taste and that dryness here in my own brew house. And so after quite a bit of cider making, I came to the conclusion that Nottingham is my go-to yeast for cider. And it's a very, very simple recipe. It's basically 5 gallons of 100% unadulterated apple juice. There's several brands. Mott's makes some. Kirkland makes it. Any number of manufacturers out there that make cider. I add enough honey, usually about 2 pounds, maybe a little more. I'm looking for a starting gravity somewhere around 1055 to about 1065, somewhere in between there. Okay, I pitch the Nottingham dry. I don't make a starter. I add very little nutrients up front, and I put the lid on the fermenter, and I just let her rip until it's done. And what I wind up with is a dry cider with an appley taste. Now, I should quantify that. This cider takes a while to develop. Okay, this is not something that you can just ferment, put it in a keg, and serve it right away. In 6 months, it'll be good. 8 months, it'll be a whole lot better. The apple taste tends to develop over time. We found that out even, I guess you could call this a sizer for all intents and purposes. But we have found that out with sizers as well. My second yeast that I've used is Saf Ales SO4. I think that works pretty well. It's an ale yeast. I think that works very well for a cider. Now, we're also talking about using fresh pressed apple juice. I have not ever used fresh pressed apple juice, but I don't know why either one of those wouldn't work. Now, the third thing, we've had guests on our show, Ryan, who have talked about making cider, hard cider, from fresh pressed apples, and just basically going to the orchard, picking up a 5-gallon bucket, putting an airlock on it, and just letting her roll with great success. Okay, that's utilizing the natural yeasts that have, that have come along with the apple juice. So those are the three as far as the yeast goes. So turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I agree. Time is important in bringing back that apple flavor. That sizer of mine that you had, JD, was
yes,
at least a year old, if
very
not
good.
More.
Yeah, very good too.
I would say the other one, if you want to bring out some fruit, 1116 is a good wine yeast. That'll help do some of that. So I like doing that. There's a lot of different yeasts that you can use. Some of the yeast companies have cider-specific strains, and I have not personally used a cider-specific strain, but you can also look into some of those. So he talks a little bit. Let's just jump down to this one and maybe end it off a little bit. Well, no, we'll answer kind of two of his questions here. He adding enzymes or acids or things like that. We talked about it earlier on the show, a little, kind of touched on it, but I'd personally wait on adding any of that stuff until after your fermentation is complete, and then you can taste and decide if you need something more.
Yeah, it's funny, he mentioned the fact that he's getting this metallic taste. That's equivalent to possibly too much acid. I've talked about a couple of projects that I did where I've had, was told to add acid and about licking the lead pipe. I mean, we won't go into detail, but that could be where that's coming from too.
Absolutely, and that's a good one. So he wants to try it out with some different ABV potentials. He's kind of had this question about when to go from a cider to an apple wine or something like that. I would tell you that it's probably going cider and apple wine is really probably just ABV distinction at some point. To people, I mean, in the homebrew world, it's a little bit fuzzier than potentially in what the government might tell you. But he also asked about apple mead with fresh pressed cider, and yeah, that's the way to go. So you got 28 gallons of fresh pressed cider in the back of the truck. That honey, and just adding honey to that, and now you've got your options. You talked about let it rip, just kind of put an airlock on it, let the natural yeast that are in there take over.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to do it. Also adding some nice yeast, some good yeast, but absolutely use that good cider. I mean, the better ingredients you're putting into it, the better product you're going to get out on the other side. So absolutely. And I think you can. I mean, now let's talk sizers for a minute. I mean, you can take sizers from hydromel strength up to stack strength. I've even seen guys make Polish meads, strength meads that they use juice, just straight. They don't even use water. They just are using juice.
Yeah.
So again, all over the board on that. But kind of like you, JD, I shoot for a starting gravity on some of mine at about 1060, right in that range.
Yeah.
And you can come out with some really great sizers.
Well, and and it doesn't stop there. I mean, how about hopping? What about dry hopping a cider?
Mm-hmm.
Give that a shot. What about adding a little bit of lemon zest to it? Try that. Maybe get a little different flavor. There are so many things you can do.
Or like I do, my hibiscus cider.
Hibiscus, yeah. It just runs the gamut. I mean, we keep telling folks that inspiration is the name of the game here at the Mead House. We saw it in real life, both at the Iron Bee and at the Valkyrie's Horn. So many mead makers showing up with some, and guys are showing up. I mean, with stuff that they didn't even enter into. They just bring it to share. They had nothing to do with the competition. They just brought it to the after party just to share it with people. And I'm telling you, Kevin, oh my God. I mean, I had some of the most fantastic meads I ever tasted from this guy. So it runs the gamut. Ryan, we're going to leave it right there and wrap the show for tonight. And hey, thanks for listening and hanging out with us in this episode. Hey, and special thanks to our guest, medal-winning home mead maker Brian Hart and his Smoke Team Mead. Hey, that was good stuff. I did have a sample of that, and that was damn good. But hey, don't forget, let us know what you're brewing, and we might even give you a call. You can email us at info@themeadhouse.com or send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, both at The Mead House. In the meantime, happy mead making. Jeff, where's that phone? That's it for this episode. Ryan, flip the lights off. Hey, you're going to have to handle the door, too. Hey, we'll be back in a week with 142 of The Mead House. We're gone.